Hello everyone, my name is Loco and welcome back to another high-level match of StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is a best of 3 series of Terran versus Protoss, where in game number 1, yikes, I talked myself into a trap there. Let's play a little bit of caster trivia. I don't know what the map name is. For some reason I'm thinking Solaris, but I don't think it is Solaris. Solaris is a lot more yellow. Heartlet? This could be Heartlet. There's 9 new maps, okay? It's gonna take me a little bit of time to learn. Spotting right here in the top left-hand corner. Playing with the red Terran SCVs and already sending out one of those bad boys, it seems, towards the other side of the map. We're looking inside of the main base of Kjur. And his opponent in the opposite corner with the blue Protoss pieces, he goes by the name of hero. It was Heartlet. Nice, Loco. Very good. Alrighty, so, Kjur. He decides to start off this game, and his very first cast that I'm doing this week, with a proxy barracks. In case you're unfamiliar, maybe you're new here, I upload new videos pretty much every single day, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below so you get notified as soon as new videos go up. And of course, I also want to give a massive shout out to the Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much so for directly supporting this channel. Barracks going up, and it is completely unscouted. Now, this probe timing over here. Ah, okay. I was gonna say, the pattern right here in which that probe moved across the map, little bit funky. Okay, so we've got ourselves some cheese versus cheese. The question is, who's gonna go for the sharper cheddar, right? Who's gonna go for the more aggressive version of it? Now, this is a zealot over here for hero. Honestly, kind of nice because it can buy a lot of time on the other side of the map, and if you do really want to, you could even chase around that Reaper for a little while and distract it. Generally, there should be a unit after this Zealot as well, as soon as the Cybercore finishes up. There we go. It's gonna be a Stalker. Now, of course, that Reaper is gonna be in the main base. Not a whole lot you can do here as the Protoss, but hero has decided to proxy the Stargate. I've been wondering about this particular build order. But let's look at the Reaper for just a moment before I blabber onwards about strategy again. That's 1 kill so far. Second kill, it seems. There we go. Yeah, Stalker at this point is out. Ooh, he may have gone a little bit too deep. Yep. Sorry, buddy. 2 probes right there only. Honestly, not ideal. There's a second Reaper coming up as well, but Kjur does not know what he's playing against right now. He's checking, though. He's looking for it. Okay, so this is a build that used to be very popular back in the day. You would go a couple of Void Rays, then you would build a couple of shield batteries over here, and then eventually you would make Tempest. Now, here's the thing. The Cyclone was the main counter to it. Please note, that's the old Cyclone. The Cyclone is now entirely different. Yeah, so a proxy Void Ray opener. The Tempest is now also a lot more microable, so if you want to go from Void Rays into Tempest, and that's ultimately where the Terran player usually dies. If Protoss ends up getting there, you're in a world of trouble. How in the world do you stop this? I guess we'll find out. Well, this very first shield battery is definitely not going to happen. That Reaper is now also a certified probe murderer, but how in the world do you kill this Void Ray? Normally, what you would do is just engage it right here with your Cyclone. That Cyclone doesn't win anymore. No, that Cyclone does not win in a one-on-one fight. And I can almost hear the Terran players that are watching this video cringe a little bit right now. Because this is one of those builds that I expected to be all over the ladder. Oh my god, okay. Yeah, I expected this build to be all over the ladder. He didn't even get his shield batteries up yet. He could have gone already into a, what do you call it, a fusion core. Is it called a fusion core? I always get the two mixed up for Terran and Protoss. In my defense though, I've only been playing this game for 13 years, literally every single day, so you can't quite, expect me to know every single unit and every single structure name. That would be absurd, but I've been wondering about this build, and I think this is one of those strategies that is gonna be very prominent on the ladder. Because if the Cyclone is not quite as good anymore at defending it, look at them. Yeah, they just die. What in the world do you do here as Terran? I am not even entirely sure. Now, obviously, this game wasn't off to a great start for Kjur because his barracks was on the other side of the map. Maybe he could have produced a reactor and then pumped out the Cyclones 2 at a time, but I don't really know if an extra Cyclone or a couple extra Marines really would have made that big of a difference. Ah, Fleet Beacon. There it is. It just popped into my head as game number 2 was loading. Fleet Beacon, Fusion Core, potato, okay, what's the difference? Game number 2. Now we do find ourselves on Solaris. I would like to see herO go for some more shenanigans like it. Yep, I'm not gonna lie. It's a build order that I absolutely hate playing against, but there is something beautiful about watching Protoss do some dirty cheeses on the other side of the map. And I think basically every single map in the current map pool has a location where you could go for some shenanigans. I mean, there's definitely space over here for some shield batteries. Actually, you know what? Maybe Solaris isn't that great. I thought that there would be some room over here as well for a shield battery or two, but honestly, you didn't even need it in the previous game. The thing is that Cure... Is he gonna go for another cheese? Or is this just gonna be... Nah, it's just gonna be an engineering bay block. The thing is that Cure... He did see the shield battery, right? So he knew roughly what he was playing against, and he still did not have an answer. That'll require a little bit more exploration for sure. Because the Cyclone really was key when it came to defending against that early game pressure from Protoss. Oftentimes what Terrans would do is they would make Vikings and Cyclones, and then generally as soon as they would finish up the Cyclone upgrade that turned on the red LEDs at the very front of it, that's usually the moment when Terran would be comfortable, and it would usually be a rush for Protoss to try and end the game before that upgrade was ever done. Now, awkward moment right here for herO. He wanted to go for a natural expansion, and then he finds out, nope, not going to happen. So instead, he's now going to be forced to take his third base first. We saw this recently in... Clem versus... Was it Clem? I think it was Clem. Where he managed to block his opponent's base as well, and then he followed it up with quick double Cyclone play. There's the reactor. I wouldn't mind it. This is not quite as exposed as it would be on Oceanborn, but this is still definitely a base that is very far away right now from the main base of the Protoss player, and Cyclones, while they may not be ideal against Void Ray cheeses, they are very dangerous when you're playing against this sort of style. But obviously, we'll have to see here if that's what Cure decides to go for. He wants to go for a CC on the low ground eventually. There we go. And I don't think he really is going to have the money to start pumping out those units 2 at a time right from the get-go. He could, though. I would kind of like to see it. Especially if Protoss is mispositioned, right? And you don't quite have your Nexus in the optimal location. It's going to be... Okay. It's going to be boring old Hellions. Fair enough. Yeah, there's a lot of potential with Cyclones in the early game, but they also are weaker in some scenarios. It really is interesting how it's shaken up the early game quite a bit. Cyril was actually doing a little live stream yesterday, and he was talking about the Cyclone, and he says, yeah, they were kind of bad back in the day, and they seem pretty bad right now. I'm not really concerned about it. I was like, okay, everybody else seems to be concerned about it, but apparently Cyril's like, nah, the unit kind of sucks still. Obviously, specifically talking about the Terran versus Zerg matchup from his perspective, I guess CVT, but there's no denying that in TVP it has a lot of ramifications. But yeah, it doesn't seem like Cero is making the assumption that we will be seeing a lot of battle mech in the Terran versus Zerg matchup moving forward. I mean, a lot of pro players right now are experimenting with it, but apparently Cero not really too keen on it. Now we're gonna go for Cyclones. Interesting. I think that's mostly just to be safe, to be honest. I think these are safety Cyclones. By the way, somebody pointed out, and this has been bothering me ever since. Remember a couple of... Don't lose your stuff here. I'm not even talking about it, because I'm assuming this is going to be an easy hold. There we go. herO does indeed block this all off. Ends up losing one of his units, though. The Adept ended up going down. Anyways, remember when we found out a couple of videos ago that the upgrade for the Cyclone is called Hurricane Thrusters? Now, it turns out that Cyclones are one of the very few Terran units that do not use thrusters to propel themselves forward. Now, I like the Cyclone Hurricane pun, right? That's pretty funny. But apparently they do not use thrusters in the StarCraft lore. So, yeah, we need a new name. If somebody has a suggestion, let me know down below in the comment section of this video. Because maybe we can still mix in the word... Maybe like hurricane threats, I think is what somebody said, because they do use threats, obviously, right here on these weird-looking tires of them. Either that, or we just replace the unit entirely with the Goliath. Just give him the exact same stats of the Cyclone. Maybe make the Goliath shoot similar missiles as well. Give him the lock-on ability. That way, you know, we get a little bit of Brood War nostalgia in the mix as well. Honestly, I wouldn't mind it. Anyhow, let's see. The Stalkers now have their Blink upgrade done. herO's still busy here on the other side of the map, dealing, however, with those Hellions that are being an absolute pain in the butt. In the end, though, not the greatest start right here for Cure whatsoever, but how in the world do you break this as a Terran, right? As a Protoss, rather. That is always the question. Stalker right here leading the charge to try and take that siege tank hit. He does decide to blink behind all of this. Cyclones are the main target, apparently, but there's a second tank on the high ground absolutely demolishing everything. So that's 5 Stalkers going down for only a handful of Terran units. Not quite ideal. That being said, though, now he obviously knows exactly where those siege tanks are located, and we're gonna continue some more harassment over here. A new siege tank just popped out. Additional zealots, by the way, for the warp-in. Interesting move. He wants to try and negate as much of that splash damage as possible. hero getting a good bit of value right now, though, out of his blink stalker control, and the zealots right there do finish the job as well with that siege tank. How many SCVs is he gonna be able to kill? Because this has been a pretty expensive trade so far. Okay, we're gonna warp in a couple more units. Siege tank has been repositioned. Okay, and we're gonna get out. 8 workers so far is actually not enough to justify this. The thing is he gonna go into the main base once again? Protoss doesn't have that much money on the back of it themselves. Marines right now starting to fall as well. Siege tank moving down to the low ground, but obviously that means that once again the high ground is vulnerable. Yeah, we're gonna go and just snipe the tech lab over here. I mean, we didn't even have the Stimpeg research or anything along those lines started up yet. It's just not really something that Cure has been thinking about at this point. I mean, he wants to, but he just doesn't have the resources and the time. Okay. And now, at this point, yeah, this is starting to look a whole lot better. Still very flimsy, though. He needs to be very cautious. He may have accidentally microed himself into a bit of a corner here, but this main, it hasn't been mining for a long time. hero is very dangerous when it comes to this sort of play. He's gonna walk around once again, and apparently we're gonna start working on the command center itself. An additional warp-in goes down. hero seems like a very dangerous player to go up against, man. Not only can he go for some very dirty cheeses, he's also got some phenomenal stalker control, and I say that right as we see about 6 of them dying. That's so many SCVs, though. He needed to sacrifice at least a bunch of them just to be able to get out of here. Another siege tank is gonna pop. Are we gonna blink? Nah, I mean, that's too greedy. That's too greedy. That's too much. There's no way. If you don't have enough right there to one-shot the siege tank, that's not going to happen. The greed consumed hero there. And I get it. I get it. I thought it was a good idea too, but as soon as he hit the blink button, yeah, no, there was no way. Okay, so in the end, though, that was an awful lot of missed mining time, and I don't even know if he's done yet. Nah, I think we're gonna go back into the main. There you go, blinking them one at a time. That siege tank is in a pretty nice position, but the Marines without Stimpeg and without combat shields and meta, they just have a very hard time fighting all of this. Oh my god, okay. Picking up the weakened stalkers, putting them inside of the medevac, repositioning them. This is gonna get shut down eventually, but we are really squeezing as much juice out of these stalkers as possible. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so, long story short, 24 stalkers for 3 siege tanks, 2 cyclones, 22 marines, and 28 SCVs. Now, obviously, one thing to note here is that, oh, he's not done yet, is that hero hasn't got the biggest economy, right? Because of the fact that, well, his early game was kind of hindered a little bit, it mostly just put him in a relatively even spot. Keep in mind as well that stalkers are not cheap units. And eventually, you're gonna need an army. Eventually, you're not gonna win the game with this alone. That bio army with Stimpeg, with combat shields, with +1 infantry weapons, it's gonna start marching across the map. Now, if Cure was worried about Dark Templar, they would have already killed him. But we are gonna go for a missile turret here. It could have easily been DTs, actually. It could have been DTs. Would have been kind of neat to see, but yeah, in hindsight, I guess you can always figure out whether or not that was a good idea. It would have shut down the Stalker control and the Stalker numbers earlier on quite a bit, so I don't really know exactly if it would have been great, but anyways, we are gonna go for a missile turret here, just to be certain. In the meantime, by the way, of course, we did have macro happening as well inside of the main base of the Protoss. He's been building up his infrastructure. There we go, a lot of additional production coming up. Nexus on the low ground is going to finish as well. Third base now pretty much fully saturated, but we do have a lot of energy available. Stimpeg is done. Yep, and this will be the time that Cure can finally go out onto the map once again. Those mules are providing him so much value, and he did kill so many stalkers with some proper siege tank target firing that... Oh yeah, this is still a little bit dicey. Fighting in the speed up circle? Oh my god, you see how fast that Zealot charged? Fighting in the speed up circle is definitely going to benefit the player with the melee units. So you have to be very careful here as Cure. Those green bubbles are not to be underestimated. We're gonna go for a medevac drop in the main base and just sort of, yeah, play this passively. I don't mind it. Third CC coming up. Putting it for some reason out front. I don't really like this location right here for the third command center very much. Free medevac. Yep. Not bad. Medevac drop in the meantime has arrived on the other side of the map. This could hurt. This could really hurt. There is a recall. But honestly, yeah, just pop these units. One immortal at least? Nah, not gonna happen. It seemed like a good idea. Manages to keep that medevac alive, but just barely. 5 probes in the end is actually really not that much. But considering the Protoss economy already wasn't amazing, yeah, it is something that is worth noting. Okay. The worker count here for hero is looking decent. The problem is he doesn't have a lot of gas and he really doesn't have that high of a quality of units either, right? Like normally you would be aiming for like Colossi or something along the something along those lines. If you want to go into just a gateway-based army with immortals for support, you're gonna need a lot more eco. If you want to play that Zergy style where you just make a ton of stalkers and zealots, 48 workers isn't gonna cut it. So he is adding on more probes. Zealots here in the main base trying to buy as much time as possible. Don't know why we use Stimpack on all of those units. But anyways, now the zealots are gonna go to town over here as well, and they'll be picked up once more. Widowmine drop apparently over here, getting 7 probes as well. And despite that phenomenal aggression earlier from hero, and despite the fact that it looked really flashy, I think at that point in the game he was already in such a rough position that he was trying to play catch-up. Oh, in the end, yeah. The amount of damage that Cure can now do because he just simply has a much bigger army is going to be difficult to overcome here for hero. 30 probes. Just like that, the Protoss economy has been absolutely smashed apart. Third command center at this point is done for Cure. He is going to run out of mineral fields very soon if he does not start mining, because, yeah, 30 SCVs on the low ground. I mean, he's heavily oversaturated for the amount of bases that he's currently got. I think he was very focused on just trying to deal as much damage as possible, and essentially are forcing the Protoss player here into an all-in. Siege tanks are sieging up. We have a couple of ghosts in the mix as well. EMP here would be lovely. There we go. A lot of these units are losing their shields. Matter of fact, drop in the main base, still going to town. Yeah, he does actually have a very heavy oversaturation. So his economical advantage, if you just look at the worker count, is really not as big as it should be. But as soon as he transfers a bunch of those workers, as in like the majority of them, and then he drops a round of mules, we're really going to be able to see what the Terran's been building up. Now this angle over here for hero is really not bad. I just wonder if he's got enough stuff. Widowmine's over here getting into a decent position as well. Some good EMPs. At the very least, the new Immortal change, I guess, helps out hero here ever so slightly. On siege tanks apparently have been called to the front as well. Their single target damage is actually not to be underestimated. We can certainly sacrifice SCVs here as well. Yeah, that was a smooth hold right there for Cure. And that means that he manages to even up the score. Equilibrium, our final game for today. And apparently, hero decides to start off this game by sending a probe straight towards the other side. Okay. We'll have to see exactly what he decides to do with it. Definitely could be for some early game aggression. Could be that max packs opener that we used to see all the time. Remember the max packs build? This was before max packs was actually a really good player. I mean, it was pretty good back then too, but not quite at the level of, for example, a hero. That build made so little sense. Now we're just gonna use it for scouting. But anyways, that build made so little sense at the time that everybody was like, yo, is this actually good? So in case you're unfamiliar, the max specs opener is where you go pylon, into gateway. Which doesn't make a lot of sense, resource-wise. And it's something that took like a decade before players really started figuring out how to play it properly. But it turns out it's very good if Terrans don't go for any sort of scouting early on, and they built that command center blindly on the low ground, because it turns out you can get the kill on the CC, or at the very least the delay on the command center for a very long time. So even though you do make 2 pylons before any unit producing structures, it works out in your favor. Not gonna be the case here though in this particular game, but I always do like that build. Puts a smile on my face, because it's a very clever build. And even though MaxPax at the time wasn't quite the top level player that he is these days, it's very obvious that he already was a very smart player back then. He just didn't quite have the mechanics yet. From what I understand, by the way, MaxPax is one of the absolute hardest working pro gamers in StarCraft 2 right now, which is still interesting to me. Because he works so hard, and he's online basically 24/7. At the very least, whenever I'm online, I see him online as well, and he just doesn't play offline tournaments. Just play some offline tournaments, man. That'd be nice. Very hard to consider somebody a top-level contender when they do not play the hardest tournaments out there. Okay. I would have really liked to see some more exploration with the Stargate proxy. I think it would have been really cool. Not going to happen in this particular game, though. But I think we will probably see more of that over the next couple of weeks, because it really did seem very strong. But maybe it was only good in game number 1 because of the proxy barracks. But then again, hero planted it down before he scouted the proxy barracks, so he didn't know that was a proxy barracks, and he already decided to go for the cheese. Would it be possible on this map? I would say that you can, yeah. It's again a little bit tricky, right? So ideally you want to have, say this is a Void Ray over here, you want to have the Void Ray shooting at the structures over here on top of the high ground. But at the same time, you want it to be healable by... Oh my god, we actually managed to delay that command center just barely. You want it to be healable by the shield batteries. And I guess game number 2 and 3 haven't really been on maps where he could have gone for it. But I think hero is probably experimenting with it quite a bit. Would not be surprised. Anyways, nice little bit of zealot delaying over here. This means that hero is going to start putting on the pressure. He's actually just pumping out as many units as he can. Second gateway coming up. Oh, we're gonna go straight into a dark shrine this time around. So he's making it look, I mean, at least somewhat similar to the previous games. It's like a mix of game number 1 and 2. But rather than going for the blink follow-up, we've decided to go for a Dark Templar rush. And remember, in the previous game, Cure did not have detection, other than, well, I guess his scans, but he didn't have any proper detection. And generally speaking, Terrans don't really want to save up a lot of energy on their orbital commands early on, because those mules are so incredibly powerful. These Cyclones have to be careful, man. In the past, they would absolutely destroy Adepts, and they still are pretty darn good, but they're a lot more flimsy. Okay, this is good though here for Cure. Yep. Not going to complete that shade over in that direction. Zealot right now also looking very exposed. And so far, this is a flawless game here for Cure. The only problem here is that he does not have any form of detection. Proxy Pylon is done. This would be a very dirty win indeed if hero ends up obtaining the victory with a Dark Templar cheese and his opponent just doesn't have detection. That's what we used to see in like 2010. It's like, you didn't have detection. Tough luck. Okay. So he's got 40 energy right now in his natural. There's definitely not enough energy in the main base. If he drops a mule, as soon as he gets up to 50 energy, which he may very well do, he's getting to it right now, he's gonna be in a world of trouble. Oh my god, he really needs to lift up that supply depot. But the problem is, there's a dance going on between the Stalkers right now and the bio units. The main ramp was not closed off, and that means that hero can finally start running away with his Stalkers, but they have a dirty little smile on their face. For sure, dude. They have like a little scarf covering their mouths, so you can't really see, but these guys are feeling dirty. Quite a few SCVs have gone down so far, and that makes this attack a whole lot more dangerous here for Cure. Oh my god, this is so many workers. He's even, Mr. Hero that is right now, winning the fight over here at the front, it seems. Those Cyclones, they're just not quite as powerful anymore in these numbers as they used to be. The Invisible Men do it again. Hero obtains the victory 2-1.